It is 10 o'clock. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. The NHL draft is in the books. The Nashville Predators brought in a haul of 8 players, including 17-year-old forward Igor Surin with the 22nd pick. NHL free agency officially begins today. The Preds can make the extension of goaltender UC Saros official, but all eyes are on 34-year-old forward Steven Stamkos. After over 15 years with the Tampa Bay Lightning, the 7-time All-Star is a free agent, and the Preds are reportedly a front-runner. NBA free agency also underway. Forward Paul George has signed a 4-year, $212 million maximum contract with the 76ers. Philadelphia also agreed to terms with guard Tyrese Maxey on a 5-year, $204 million maximum extension. Nashville Soccer Club fell at home to Inter Miami on Saturday, a 2-1 loss at Geodis Park. Nashville remains 7th in the Eastern Conference. They will travel to Columbus on Wednesday and Portland on Sunday. The Ally 400 was at Nashville Super Speedway on Sunday. Joey Logano, the winner. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Good morning. Hope everybody's off to a hot start. Not so hot, actually, on this Monday. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. We're very pleased to have you here for the next 3 hours. Jackson, Lucas, and myself, we've got you until 1 o'clock, and we could very well be on the precipice, it seems, of having another blockbuster free agency in the same year, between the Titans going crazy with their bank account and having all the cap space in the world to spend. Lucas just rattled off a bunch of names there that are very, very interesting for the Nashville Predators to be involved in. NHL free agency officially open, and I would love if the Preds were buying big ahead of a season where they make the playoffs, but you understand that they truly, truly need another top-line scorer.
Barry Trotz has talked the talk, and with your reports trickling in about Steven Stamkos, potentially Jonathan Marchessault as well, Barry Trotz might be walking the walk as NHL free agency opens up.
Okay, so we'll find out how that goes. If it happens during our show, we'll keep you updated. If it happens not during our show, I'm sure the rest of the lineup will do the exact same. 615-737-1045. That's the number. You got Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch with which to interact with us throughout the duration of the broadcast. Dane Brugler of The Athletic, their top draft analyst, is going to join us. We're going to go pick by pick and see how Dane thought, or see how Dane liked the way that the Titans approached their particular draft. I know he's got an issue with at least one of the draft picks that the Tennessee Titans made in this past cycle, but that's not where we're going to start, because it's, the best month of the year, understandably so. It's cancer season, so we love to see it. It is also the day that SEC gets its 2 newest members, Texas and Oklahoma. Welcome in. Did you get them a gift basket to welcome them to your conference, Jackson and Lucas?
Got them like a prank chair to sit in at the table that you walk in, got a table for here for you, sir. They sit down, and then it collapses under them, and we stand over them. No, I don't know. I think Oklahoma and Texas will fit right in.
Stand over them? What do you... What is a Tennessee fan going to stand over a Texas fan for right now? Please tell me.
Well, it is interesting how that Oklahoma game now is that early season tone setter for Tennessee, and it's going to take some getting used to for that to not be Florida. For so long, really since 1992, with the exception of the 2001 season where 9/11 had to move that game to December, the Tennessee-Florida game, Week 3, SEC opener, has pretty much defined how the season is going to go for Tennessee. More often than not, it went wrong for the Vols, and then the season followed suit. But now that's Oklahoma, and that's an SEC game. And Josh Heupel goes back to the place where he won the national championship for the first time in Week 3, and we play Florida in October, which is going to be strange.
Did you read Chris Lowe on ESPN.com this morning? There's a really good piece about Sarkisian kind of as the lead in to the story about Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC. And during the process of him being hired as the Texas head coach, what was that, about 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago? At this point, apparently Sark had laid out what it was going to take for Texas to become the kind of power that its fan base expects it to be. And he had just wrapped up, obviously, in the SEC, was the OC for Alabama for the previous 2 seasons, and they won the national championship during the COVID year. Were they COVID natty champs? Was that Saban's last?
Yes.
So,
yes, Mac Jones.
LSU, the year prior, won the, with their, I'm reading the wrong thing. Anyway, Crimson Tide, Steve Sarkisian gets hired. He goes to Texas, and he's laying out the plan for the university president on why this is going to be, I'm the right choice for you to hire as your next head coach to see this program into viability again. And so far, he's done, an excellent job would probably lend itself to a national championship, right? To do an excellent job in his first couple of years on the job, beyond restoring Texas to a consistent playoff contender, where obviously they had competed in the playoff last year, but he's
done an excellent job.
You think he's done an excellent job?
Yes. He has been the first coach to actually build Texas back to an SEC caliber roster, because like you said, that's the standard now for Texas football, and to legitimate national championship contention, going toe-to-toe with Washington in that college football playoff semifinal. I don't know what would have happened with Texas and Michigan in the national title game, but yes, he is the first coach since Mac Brown to legitimately put Texas in a conversation where you can seriously, with a straight face, say, yes, they are national championship contenders. They were last year, and they expect to be this year.
So I guess the reason that I'm a little hesitant on excellent is because is there a more well-resourced football program anywhere in the country than Texas football? It would be really, really hard for me to just be like, oh, what a phenomenal job this individual has done coming into a program that's got all the money, all the recruiting, all the in-state talent, all of it right there for you. And listen, to his credit, he's the first one, like Lucas has said, to put it together since Mac Brown, because it's not been easy sledding at Texas for one reason or another. But I struggle with an excellent job when there is no better backed program, as far as I can tell, than Texas football.
So what? He has not done an excellent job until they win a national championship? Sure. Like nothing he did to build up to that point? Like everything
at
that
one of these Power 4, I almost said Power 5. I got to break myself with that throughout the course of the offseason. At a Power 4 job to go to Texas to get to the playoff, it's an above-average job. Excellent should be reserved for national title, and they have not yet won a national title nor played for one.
Kirby was only doing a good job until he won a national championship?
Yes, because Georgia is a good job.
No, Kirby was doing an above-standard, excellent, elite job.
Okay, was Mark Richt doing a good job?
Yeah, Mark Richt was good. Yes.
He was good.
Mark Richt was good. Kirby Smart built Georgia.
Georgia fans would probably push back on that because good for Georgia fans is piss poor.
Mark Richt was good. He did not get Georgia over the hump that Kirby Smart did. But I have a problem with saying, no, you have not done an excellent job as a head coach until you win that national championship, because all of the work that built up to winning the national championship took place before the national championship in the years prior.
That's fine.
So the job Kirby was doing was elite. It was near Saban level. And then they broke through and won the national championship, not because he wasn't excellent until that year, because he was from the beginning.
No, for me to look a 3-year body of work and say excellent, it's the entire summation. He has not yet played for or won a national championship. And I'm fine to have higher standards than you on that. That's okay. That doesn't bother me at all. Beyond just getting bogged down in the Texas of it, because I feel like that's going to happen a lot, even though Oklahoma is the team on Tennessee's schedule in the first year of SEC play, including these two. Are the two of them ready for it? Texas, I can say indisputably yes. Texas is ready for the opportunity in front of them. Oklahoma seems to be trending in the right direction under Brent Venables. We've talked about them before, and kind of the the place that Lincoln Riley left the program and what Venables had to do to turn it over and how the transfer portal impacted those things and how they've tried to right the ship. I think that for those two programs in particular, if you had to pick any two non-SEC football programs, and I understand that it's going to be basketball and it's going to be baseball, it's going to be all of it. It's not just football, but within the context of the money sport, the two of them I think are well equipped to enter SEC play and hold their own. Now, holding their own in the SEC is going to look a hell of a lot different than holding your own in the Big 12. We can all agree upon that. Where the basement of the SEC is Vanderbilt, but really you're talking about a league that top to bottom is competitive. Vandy aspiring to competitive of late, but the rest of it pretty damn tough to get a regular season win. And how Texas fans are going to react to it, how Oklahoma fans are going to react to it is going to be fascinating. I cannot wait for the first opportunity when Tennessee has Texas on the schedule so I can troll for no other reason than to bother Texas fans. I cannot wait to make horns down symbols at people and bother the holy hell out of them. Jackson, it almost... are we going to make horns down a gang sign? Are we going to start just flashing the horns down symbol at people?
Absolutely.
So we're all excited about it, right? To have more quality football programs in a conference that's already chock full of them can only be a good thing. And the money, of course, is the primary reason that the two of them are leaving the Big 12 and joining the SEC. But as far as the readiness of the two programs, I don't think anybody could dispute, even if you like to bother Texas, and plenty of people do, that the two of them are not ready for the opportunity in front of them. And it's just as important for the rest of the SEC to recognize that and not just puff their chests out and say, it just means more here, boys. Welcome to the show.
Yes. I mean, Missouri came into the SEC and immediately won the East back-to-back, right? Texas A&M came into the SEC and pretty quickly, actually immediately beat Alabama. Didn't get over the hump of winning a championship or winning the division, but they immediately proved they belong in the conversation, however much of it you want to assign to Johnny Football. But Texas and Oklahoma are going to come in and do that. And you never know how they're going to respond to the rigors of an SEC regular season compared to a Big 12 one. But there's no question the programs are ready for this moment. By the way, quick refresher. Today, Army is an AAC school. SMU is an ACC school.
Oh, that's right. There's all kinds of other stuff.
1 month from today, Cal and Stanford are going to be ACC schools. The Atlantic Coastal Conference. I can't. A week or a month from today.
That one's pretty tough, right? It's the UCLA Big Ten thing, but it's even more. It's literally the polar opposite.
Yes, the two West Coast schools in the Atlantic Coastal Conference.
Sitting on the Pacific Coast, playing in the Atlantic Coast Conference.
1 month from today, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah will officially be Big 12 schools. 1 month from today, or 1 month from tomorrow, I should say, Oregon, UCLA, USC, and Washington will be Big 10 schools. Also today, Kennesaw State is in Conference USA, and Oklahoma and Texas are in the SEC.
Dane Brugler of The Athletic, he's based out of Texas, as a matter of fact, so perhaps Dane has some opinions on this. I know he has opinions on the Titans' new draft class. We'll talk about that with Dane Brugler coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. Our next guest has been kind enough to not file a restraining order against me because I've been peppering him since the NFL draft to join the show. And he's a very, very busy man, and we appreciate him making any time. Dane Brugler of The Athletic joins us now on 104.5 The Zone. As you well know, The Athletic, well worth your subscription, not just for the Beast, which is at this point, Dane, it's one of, if not the foremost resources when the draft comes around that anybody else produces. I know there are plenty of people that have done draft analysis before, but it's as thorough a resource as anything out there that I can find when I'm trying to educate myself on players that I don't have time to watch.
Well, that's the goal, right? I mean, it's the one-stop shop for everything, and the details matter, especially when you're talking about these prospects. Everything from how they grew up, their background, to all their production, some of the hidden metrics, to what scouts are saying about them on the field, off the field, and then of course the analysis. So yeah, the Beast has it covers everything from top to bottom. Thousands and thousands of players in there, and so it's trying to make it better every year. And I think it's getting tougher and tougher to do that. But the response has been awesome, and so we'll keep doing it.
TheAthletic.com is where you go for the great sports journalism that they do, including the Beast Draft Guide each and every year. How often do you get to a player whether maybe somebody's asking you about a player where you haven't had the opportunity to get to that specific player yet? Because I have to imagine that you have a pretty thorough accounting of all of the players that are at least draft eligible, because I know you get into some UDFA guys occasionally too.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, I've not encountered a player who was drafted that I did not have at least some understanding of who the player was, what kind of player he was based on tape. It's been a while, because this is really my job right now in the summer, is to get a base understanding of who these players are before we go into the season. Understand, okay, this is where the player does well. This is where he needs to get better, because you need that frame of reference as you go into the season to understand, okay, is this player getting better, or is this kind of who he is? And that helps shape the grade that you put on that player. So yeah, it's always looking under every rock, trying to figure out, okay, when is enough? Because obviously I'm one person. There's only so much tape you can watch on a player. But before, that's maybe my biggest struggle, is understanding, okay, time to move on, time to go to the next guy, because there's just so much ground to cover. But it's try to treat my job as if I'm the 33rd franchise.
Well, and especially, and I know The Athletic is well resourced, but it's tough to do that as a one-man. I know it's not entirely a one-man operation, but pretty damn close. Dane Brugler of The Athletic here with us on 104.5 The Zone. So the Titans have we'll call it a meat and potatoes type of draft, because they have so many needs everywhere. They're just trying to fundamentally get too competitive at this point under Rand Carthon, and their free agency was what helped account for some of the places where they had those gaps. But before we talk about the individuals that are a part of that class, is that a fair assessment of what it is that Rand Carthon and his staff put together this offseason in your estimation?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, obviously the franchise has undergone some leadership changes the last few years, both in the front office and with the coaching staff. And it feels like they're just an organization in flux, where they're trying to figure out, what is our identity? What is it that we want to be? And so with a second-year quarterback and Will Levis, and figuring out, okay, is he the true long-term option? No more Derrick Henry. This was a draft where let's not shoot for the moon, because it feels like under the previous regime, there's a lot of risk-taking, especially with early first-round picks and those early round picks. Let's just meat potatoes is a good way to put it. You draft the offensive lineman in the first round. Second round, you took a risk, but you're drafting in the trenches. You're trying to build up that beef inside. And then, you draft a guy like Cedric Gray, and, you're drafting key pieces that you want to build your roster around. And so I think it was, as they, I don't know that they're looking at 2024 as, okay, it's Super Bowl time. Let's build this thing up and see how far we can take it. Let's make sure we're at least competitive. So we're going to be making noise in the AFC South, and who knows how far we can take it, but let's make sure we have longevity here. And I think that's what this draft was all about.
As far as, before we talk about this specific draft class, obviously last year they brought in Will Levis to work behind Ryan Tannehill. Malik Willis not quite up to snuff at the NFL level to be able to take that job over whenever they were ready for the peaceful transition of power at the quarterback position. But as far as the prospects or I guess now that they're pros, hardly prospects anymore, the AFC South quarterbacks, how do you kind of view the four of them, given what your analysis was when they were collegiate players and now having seen at least a representative sample size of everybody really but Anthony Richardson?
Yeah, and it's obviously really interesting with all the second-year guys. Trevor Lawrence just getting that huge deal, well-deserved. I think that, you could maybe say that he hasn't taken that next step yet, but if you're the Jaguars, what are you going to do? Not sign him? I mean, you have to. That's just kind of the game, how the game is played. You have to keep your young quarterback. They gave him the going rate. We'll see. Now it's kind of up to Trevor Lawrence now to take that next step and cut down on some of the turnovers. He has the ability. It's not a talent issue with him. It's just, showing up when his team needs it the most. And so we'll see if he can do that this year with the changes they made on that offense. And then, of course, it's the second year guys. And what CJ Stroud did last year was nothing short of phenomenal. It's okay. What does he do in year two? Conceivably they've upgraded the talent around him, but now that defenses have had an off season to really look at what they can do to put more pressure on him, maybe looking at what Baltimore did in the playoffs against the Texans offense. But safe to say the Texans are feeling very optimistic about their quarterback situation. And then with Anthony Richardson, it wasn't always perfect when he was on the field, especially as a passer. But man, the excitement that he did bring to that offense was fun. Now it's just, can he stay on the field? Can he stay healthy? But it's going to be fun watching the maturation of all four of these quarterbacks to see, okay, who can really rise to the moment in this division. It's exciting, but there's also a lot of pressure on these guys. And Will Levis maybe the most. And so can he take that next step? Obviously, he has that chip from falling to the second round when I know a lot of teams believed he would go in the first round. The Titans, I know, made some calls into the first round. They were looking to trade up and get him. They weren't able to get a deal done because the teams in the late first weren't ready to trade out. And so they were happy to get him in the second round. But now, okay, it's up to Levis. Can he show that, hey, I am the guy moving forward? And it's just about consistency with him. He has a lot of ability, has a lot of talent, just like Richardson, just like Trevor Lawrence. He has a talent. It's just, can he be consistent when things are most chaotic? And we'll see if he's able to put that together this year.
God knows it'd be tough to be more chaotic than the offensive line situation he had in front of him, because when you bring up the pressure, it's both physical and metaphorically speaking for Will Levis. He's been running for his life. Basically his last year at Kentucky and then his first year with the Titans, it has been that kind of way. But J.C. Latham, obviously in the first round, after Alt goes 5 to the Chargers, know there was a contingent of Titans fans that were interested in Malik Neighbors. Obviously, he was not on the board either by the time they got to the 7th overall pick. And I do a weekly podcast with Greg Cosell. We had talked about the idea of a receiver over a tackle. Basically, if it was any of the top 3, they ultimately opt for the tackle. Makes the most sense here. Would that have been your path forward for the Titans if you had your druthers based on who was available on the board, J.C. Latham or the wide receiver field, let's say?
It would be awfully tough to pass on these receivers. The top 3 guys, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze. It'd be awfully tough to pass on one of these guys. You better be convinced that the offensive lineman you're drafting is going to be a plug and play and a steadying presence to your roster for the conceivable future, because you're passing up on a true weapon. And that's what today's NFL is all about, having those weapons at receiver, guys that can create. And so it's a little bit of a gamble. If you hold my feet to the fire, I'm probably going with Rome Odunze there. I'm taking the skill player. I'm taking the even though it's easier to find theoretically, it's easier to find receivers, second round, third round, fourth round, than it is offensive linemen. I get that. But the high ceiling that Aroma Dunze gives you almost immediately, and especially for a young quarterback, that is huge and tough to find out there. But it's also, you need to help your young quarterback in terms of protection, like you were alluding to. And J.C. Latham, who is not a finished product by any means, but probably the strongest player in the entire draft. A guy that is almost 6'6", 340-ish pounds. Bothered me a little bit that he didn't work out before the draft in terms of he didn't run, he didn't jump, he didn't do the three cone, he didn't do anything. And it wasn't an injury situation, it was just choice. Usually that's, if you're making that decision, it's because you're trying to hide something. But I think when you just focus on the film with J.C. Latham, you see a guy that when he sets up a brick wall and then he clamps you down. And it doesn't matter if he's facing speed rushers, facing power, he can counter. Some of the inside moves will give him trouble at times, and that's something that he needs to get better at going up against NFL pass rushers. But this is an ascending player. All of his quote-unquote issues are fixable. They're things that will continue to be improved with coaching, and obviously the Titans feel pretty confident about their offensive line coaching this year. So I think if you're the Titans, it would have been nice to exciting to have that new shiny toy at receiver, but I think they can feel pretty confident about that offensive lineman they're getting and what that's going to mean for the rest of the offensive line in terms of getting the best five out there and really stabilizing a unit that has been a problem for the last how many years for this team.
Since Lawan popped his ACL the first time, I think in 2020, Dane Brugler of The Athletic here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Of course, you can follow him on Twitter at DP Brugler.
So it crippled almost everything they did offensively last year, Dane, in a way that made it tough at times to truly get a good read on Will Levis as a rookie. I'm curious if you felt like we got enough of a sample size from Levis in his rookie year for you to make any adjustment off of what you thought about him going into the draft process when you had him as a first-round prospect.
Yeah, he's obviously, when you look at Will Levis, he's physically built for the game. He is strong in the pocket, moves very well for a size, for a guy that's 6'4", 230-ish pounds. And, we saw that almost immediately with the Titans, with the way he could create with his legs. It does look a little chaotic at times, but I think it's more controlled chaos with him. He has all the tools in terms of the quick release, the arm strength, the ability to work off balance on the move, his run skills. He's not Malik Willis in terms of the athleticism, but he has functional run skills where he will pick up chunk yards. He will move the pocket when he needs to. The biggest thing for him is just being more consistent with the decision making, with the timing, trusting what he sees. And that's something that at Kentucky, he didn't always trust what he saw out there. I think when you watched him as a rookie this past year, he didn't always trust what he saw, but I thought we saw encouraging flashes, where he would anticipate the coverage, understand where his receiver was going to be, and then he threw to a spot. It wasn't necessarily, this guy has to come open. He did show some encouraging signs that, but there's still some areas where, locking onto receivers, you can tell where he wants to go at times. And so that's a area of his game where he needs to continue to get better, because this is a guy, his entire life, he has such a rocket arm, and he's so good in terms of just the physical traits at the position where he could get away with that for most of his life. But then, once you play in the SEC and now in the NFL, you have to use your eyes a little bit more deceptively. You have to be able to manipulate the defense based off of what they're showing and what you want to do. So some of the finer points of the position, he's still growing, developing, not uncommon for a young quarterback. I think he showed enough positive signs last year where you're feeling confident going up into this year, but this is a huge season for Will Levis to show strides in those areas in order for this franchise to truly believe this is the right guy to move forward.
Yeah, they've got there's always risk involved in personnel decisions, no matter what the sport is. In the NFL, more so than any, just with the pure volume of players that you have on your roster and the risk assessment that you have to make. So where there is some risk associated with Will Levis, there's a different level of risk associated with a guy like Tavondre Sweat, who the Titans drafted in the second round. He is a phenomenal player at Texas, obviously. The Big 12 Defensive Lineman of the Year, the Outland Trophy winner. I mean, he is a really, really effective player, especially for a big guy on the interior to be able to push the pocket. And you can see what they envision putting him alongside Jeff Simmons. But for you, Dane, at least when I listen back to the Athletic NFL show that you and Robert Mays were obviously a big part of, and Nate Tice throughout the course of the draft process, it sounded like you didn't love the opportunity cost situation that they may have had with Sweat at the pick that they took him at.
T'Vondre Sweat was one of the wild cards of the draft. He really was, because everything that you just mentioned, he has, for a guy that's 360 some pounds, for him to be able to move like he can, it's just, there's only so much you can do if you're a center or a blocker trying to slow him down. But it all comes down to, can you trust him? And that's something that there's several red flags. You go back to on and off the field. He was a fifth-year senior. His first 4 years at Texas combined, he had a grand total of 9.5 tackles for loss. So single-digit tackles for loss. Why not the production until your fifth and final year? Why did it take 5 years for you to kind of get your act together? I mean, he was open with scouts that he maybe was kind of enjoying the college life a little too much as an underclassman with the Longhorns. And that was something that scouts talked about often, about how off the field, he loved the party. It was a part of what he did. And throughout the draft process, T'Vondre Sweat, when he was meeting with teams and talking with scouts, he did a lot to kind of convince teams that, hey, I'm ready to be a professional. I've turned over a new leaf, and I'm kind of matured. But then 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the draft, he gets a DWI, and it's like, okay, is this guy just telling us what we want to hear, or is this just a blip on his development trajectory? I mean, there's all these red flags with a guy like this who's so talented that every team looked at him very differently. He was off a lot of boards around the league. Other teams thought, okay, if he gets to, let's say, the fourth round, we'll feel comfortable drafting him there. There's no way to be sure if the Titans don't draft him in the second round. Would he even still be there in the third round? Or were there other teams ready to take him in the second round? We'll never know for sure how that would play out. But we do know that it is certainly a risk to take a T'Vondre Sweat where they took him. But again, if it works out, if he plays up to the level he's capable of, the talent level, if he keeps his nose clean and it truly buys into being a professional at the NFL level, it could look like a steal, because it's a first round caliber talent with a lot of question marks that scared off a lot of other teams. Every team looks at risk a little bit differently. For the Titans, they saw the talent outweighing some of the risk, at least at that point in the second round. So time will tell. I'm sure we'll revisit this, in the season, and then at next off season, and as we move forward, and kind of break it down from there.
Dane Brugler of The Athletic here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Yeah, I mean, they drafted T'Vondre Sweat knowing the same backstory that you've just outlined, that the guy likes to party. And it's been a bit of a sticking point here, Dane, because he hasn't practiced in front of us since rookie minicamp. And I know open practices in front of media aren't the end of the world, but when he is that level of unavailable, with also that much scrutiny on him and the addition of the red flags, it becomes a bit of a talking point.
The weight as well. He was up to, in the college football playoffs, he was close to 390. And so it's like, okay, can we manage his weight? Will he stay down close under 370 pounds? Like that's something that is going to be a big sticking point with him, is just, okay, now that he's got all this money, and it's going to be maybe some more potential distractions. Can he do enough to keep that weight down so he plays in that 365 range, as opposed to the 390 he was up to later in the season?
Yeah, they told us when they drafted him he was 366, and then he told us that all he had to do was get to 355, and he's a Pro Football Hall of Famer. So makes me think that he wasn't quite 366 around the time of the draft day. Maybe I'm nitpicking.
Yeah.
We unfortunately have run out of time. I'd love to have you on again in the near future to talk more about the rest of the draft class, because the players are really interesting here, and how they're going to be utilized in the system is something that I'd like to dive into. But I really appreciate you taking some time, buddy. The analysis is always excellent, and we appreciate it.
Anytime, man. Take care.
That's Dane Brugler of The Athletic. Coming up next, Jackson, I have massive Nashville Predators breaking news. We'll tell you about it. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. All right, so I had to cross-check this with Lucas because I wanted to make sure that these are actual reports, but in fact, we do have breaking sports news. Do we have a Preds Laser Light show?
Breaking sports news on 104.5 The Zone.
All right, Pierre LeBrun, who is TSN's lead hockey insider and senior NHL columnist for The Athletic, has 2 tweets relevant to the Nashville Predators. 14 minutes ago, we'll see where it ends up officially, but word is Steven Stamkos' deal with the Nashville Predators should end up around 4 years and $8 million on an average annual value at this point. So he's essentially saying, barring contract details, Steven Stamkos is the newest member of the Nashville Predators. He then adds a couple of tweets later, if the Predators can finalize things with Jonathan Marchessault, did I say that right?
Marchessault. Why are you trying to make it like
show? I don't know.
Like you're saying show, like SHOW.
It feels like it should be show to me.
Why? It's 2 S's.
I don't know. It's well, I'm not getting anywhere near the Brady dude's last name. I'm not touching that one. You have to outsource.
Yeah, Jonathan Marchessault.
Outsource that one for me. But either way, if the Predators can finalize things with Jonathan Marchessault,
my goodness,
I can't do it. Hearing his deal with Nashville will be 5 years, around $5.5 million average annual value. I'm sorry. Say it again.
Marchessault. There you go.
It doesn't sound natural to me. Like I have to think about it. Anyway, he's the newest Predator. Congratulations. This is big. This is massive. For a team that had just such a glaringly obvious need for another top-line scorer to get 2 players who are proven commodities in this way to add into that mix of what you already have in terms of the youth movement that the Predators are undergoing. You've got UC Saros now locked up on an 8-year contract. You'll figure out the backup goaltender situation and the prospect situation later. But on the heels of the NHL draft and adding what you did there, those are 2 massive signings for the Nashville Predators in the landscape of the NHL free agency.
Yeah, this is the type of stuff Barry Trotz is talking about when he talks about bringing in star power, goal-scoring star power, which last year, that big move was to bring in Ryan O'Reilly, who, of course, is under contract for, I believe, the next 3 seasons. And now you have some sort of actual center depth. And the thing that sticks out with Stamkos, obviously, is the age. He's 34. He'll turn 35 at some point in the season. Marchessault, 33. He'll turn 34 pretty early in the upcoming season. But the numbers show you that there's not been a lot of drop-off with these guys. In fact, Marchessault just had a career year. His first 40-goal season of his career with the Golden Knights happened last season. Steven Stamkos has been an 80-point player in each of the last 3 seasons. So even if you look at a guy like Stamkos, who is an absolute legend, right? I mean, you're talking about a future Hall of Famer, one of the best players of his generation, and that is not hyperbole. A Tampa Bay legend, 2-time Stanley Cup winner, 7-time All-Star, all of those things. Last season, Stamkos, 40 goals, 41 assists. Let's say he takes a decently significant step back, right? 30 goals, 30 assists. Sure as hell I'll take that.
Take it and run.
Yeah.
For this team, absolutely.
And Marchessault has kind of been on an incline for the last 3 seasons. Like I said, a career year last year, despite him also being well into his 30s. So Preds aren't getting any younger, but you cannot argue they are not getting better. And if both of these moves go through and are official, then the Nashville Predators, though still needing help defensively with Roman Josi, absolutely should be considered Western Conference contenders, in my opinion.
615-737-1045 is the number. NHL free agency going on right now. We'll continue to keep you updated with the latest. So there was, and I just remember seeing it on, maybe an ESPN.com headline or something like that. Stamkos was pretty dissatisfied with the fact that there were no substantive contract or extension talks with Tampa Bay. Because, I mean, his last deal was what, back in 2015, 2016, right before, I want to say, the Nashville Predators made that Stanley Cup run. So if I'm Barry Trotz, as soon as I get wind that he's even the slightest bit unhappy in Tampa Bay, I'm calling around and being like, all right, what's it going to take to get him to Nashville when free agency starts in July? Because it sounds like they were at least sniffing around it if not earlier, but as early as this past March. So those are two huge transactions for the Predators, and we will continue to keep an eye on that. And also, Tennessee, same way we talk about NFL free agency or any kind of free agency situation, Tennessee, very much like Florida in terms of the taxation situation. No state income tax, which is really, really nice. And, I mean, as far as, like, places to live, Tampa and, I mean, Nashville, I believe to be a superior city to Tampa Bay. Not that I don't like Tampa or anything like that. I just think in terms of things to do and where you might want to end your career, Nashville's a pretty good spot. So we will see what happens there. I do think, and we should have asked Alex Doherty about this when he was on with us. What was that, Friday?
Mm-hmm. To talk about Saros' contract extension, which can become official today.
Right. He did not, and I didn't listen back to the interview before I came in here today, but I don't remember him saying anything about a plan to potentially trade Askarov, the goaltending prospect.
No, I don't think that there has to be, like, why does that have to be the next reaction?
It doesn't.
Right?
Well, for a fan, and you understand, it's the same thing as Traylon Burks. Oh, they signed Calvin Ridley. Get Traylon Burks the hell out of here.
Right, exactly.
You have viable depth at wide receiver for the first time in God knows how long.
Exactly.
Stop it.
You can keep your viable depth at goaltender and see how much his value can appreciate, because there's no denying the talent, but he did not have a great back half of the season with Milwaukee, Askarov. So, yeah, I don't know why that has to be the knee-jerk reaction that just because Saros is going to get this contract, which I suppose can be official in like an hour. Free agency doesn't technically start until noon. So you're seeing all these reported deals. Nothing can be officially official from a little over an hour from now. So, yeah, I don't know why that has to be the knee-jerk reaction that because Saros is getting an extension that you immediately have to trade Askarov. The Preds can take their time on that and see what happens with his value over the course of the next couple of years. If this thing goes official with Stamkos and Marchessault, then the Preds have already stolen the headlines of NHL free agency.
Truly.
Right out the gate. So Barry Trotz, like I said, talking the talk. This is the type of moves that Barry Trotz says he wants to make as a general manager, and he's swinging big and he's doing it.
Should we get Barry Trotz on? He was great, though. We've only had him on the show once. We should probably do that once the free agency cycle. Well, this is a short week. We'll figure it out later on next week. Anyway, 615-737-1045 is the number. We'll keep you updated with the latest on the Preds free agency acquisitions. We're also going to get into the most underappreciated Titans player of the last decade. We got a couple of names to pull from. That's in the second hour. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 11 o'clock. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. NHL free agency starts today, and the Nashville Predators reportedly are making big moves. Pierre LeBrun reporting that the word is that a deal with Steven Stamkos, the Tampa Bay legend, should end up around 4 years and $8 million in average annual value per year if he signs with the Predators. Also, LeBrun tweeting 18 minutes ago that if the Predators can finalize things with winger Jonathan Marchessault, he hears his deal with Nashville would be 5 years with a $5.5 million AAV. NHL free agency getting fired up. NBA free agency also underway. Forward Paul George signing a 4-year, $212 million maximum contract with the 76ers. Philadelphia also agreed to terms with guard Tyrese Maxey on a 5-year, $204 million maximum extension. For your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
We've got official live breaking news.
Breaking sports news on 104.5 The Zone.
I do hate that damn thing. If I could get rid of one thing on the radio show, it would be that godforsaken laser light show. Anyway.
That wouldn't be mine.
That is a very underrated joke that you just made. Yes, good morning. Welcome in. This is the second hour. Lucas, Jackson, me for now. Until such time as Lucas gets his way. You're stuck with me. We're with you till 1 o'clock. Yes, Elliot Friedman making Lucas's reported news official. Jonathan Marchessault. I butchered it again.
Just go with it.
$5.5 million on a 5-year deal, 5 years, $5.5 million on an average annual basis to join the Nashville Predators. After their playoff appearance was, I don't know, how would you describe the Preds postseason and their inability to win a playoff series after missing the playoffs a year ago for the first time in, what was it, 8 consecutive seasons?
I would describe the end of the Preds season as peaking slightly too early.
Yes. So when we talked about that, because it's impossible to predict. And then after the fact, it's always easy to go in retrospect. Well, they peaked too early. They were scoring at a rate that was unsustainable. And then turns out, yes, it was in fact unsustainable. And they ran into a bit of a brick wall, but that's fine. They have the bones in place to get this thing right. And with their reported deal for Steven Stamkos that we told you about earlier, courtesy of Pierre LeBrun, and now the Marchessault deal made official today, this is a huge opportunity for the Nashville Predators to get back into the mix legitimately in the Western Conference at this point. Barry Trotz continuing to, I think, garner Barry Trotz is always going to have the love and respect of Nashville Predators fans. But GM Barry Trotz was an unknown commodity despite having personnel experience in previous stops after he left Nashville. And the whole thing with David Poile and him taking not being replaced, but taking a significantly bigger backseat to the role of general manager, which is now Barry Trotz's. The work that he has done in a year to get this thing back to a place of legit competitiveness, you have to really, really like, if you're a Preds fan, the job that and I can't speak to the soccer, so I'll leave that for Lucas, but 2 of the 3 pro GMs in town doing pretty good job with available resources that maybe their predecessors didn't have the flexibility of.
And it's a very pivotal moment right now for Nashville SC GM Mike Jacobs with a new head coach to be named, I believe at some point in the near future. Steven Stamkos has tweeted, the Tampa Bay Lightning legend, tweeting about 10 minutes ago, "Thank you, Tampa," with heart emojis. "I don't have the words yet. I will soon. It's still too early to process. Just wanted everyone to know how thankful we are for 16 years as a Bolt. My family and I are excited for the next chapter." And it's being reported that chapter will be a 4-year deal in Nashville. So if these things do officially come to pass, which seems like that's where we're headed, Marchessault, 5 years, would you say $5.5 million AAV? The report with Stamkos is 4 years, $8 million AAV. You're talking about a top line of Forsberg, Stamkos, Marchessault, all three players that had 40-goal seasons a year ago. I am not a Preds historian. I would love to ask someone who is.
John Glennon.
A John Glennon. Maybe we can get in tomorrow. A Teresa Walker. Anybody that could tell me if that would be the first time in franchise history that they could have a top line consisting of three players coming off a 40-goal season the year prior. I would venture to guess the answer is yes.
So, do we think that Steven Stamkos, so if you had to put him into buckets essentially, or I guess tiers is probably the better way to do this, impact players that this team desperately needs. Steven Stamkos is not at the peak of his powers anymore, but he's still probably, if tier one is the best tier, the most impactful tier, Steven Stamkos probably a fringe tier one versus tier two type of player at this point in his career. There's a lot of interesting names out there in NHL free agency. I know there's no love lost for Jake Gensel among Preds fans for not his most recent stop with the Carolina Hurricanes, but during his time with the Pittsburgh Penguins. There's a handful of names out here that could have immediate impact on whichever franchise that they have, and I feel like the Preds just landed two of maybe 4 or 5 guys that you could name as legitimate tier one type of free agent signings.
There is not a player born in the 1990s that has scored more goals and more points than Steven Stamkos. I mean, this you're talking about an elite player of his generation. In that Alexander Ovechkin sort of generation. He's, 4 years younger than Ovi? So still an elite player, maybe not at the peak of his powers, maybe not a 50-goal type of player, but yeah, this would be, if all of these come to pass, you could argue the biggest free agency period in Nashville Predators history. Barry Trotz has such a massive role to play in this. Harold in the FNM Bank chat says, players respect and like Trotz like the NFL players do for Rand. Rand definitely has that personal connection with players that I think can be an advantage in a lot of ways.
Oh! Breaking sports news on 104.5 The Zone.
Not quite. Elliot Friedman, who reported that deal, has deleted the tweet.
Which one?
The Marchessault tweet about the deal. That is the breaking sports news. Now, he has not updated it since, but Jackson just got in my ear and said that it is, and I'm looking at his timeline right now, he's tweeting very, very rapidly. I no longer see anything about the Preds signing this wing that you were very excited to have. I was very excited to have. I still may be a thing, but it doesn't sound like it's as locked up as we might have believed not 30 seconds ago.
The LeBrun tweet is still up. That was 30 minutes ago, where he said if the Predators can finalize things with Marchessault, his deal will be 5 years, $5.5 million AAV.
Can I just call him March?
Sure.
I'm just going to call him March.
You won't be the first.
So, if this holds, which it seems a little in question right now, though I'm sure there will be a follow-up at least clarifying the information here in just a second. And of course, we will wait until nothing's official really until you see the team put it out there, because pen has to be put to paper. But that would be a pretty interesting development if they were in it, had a deal, terms agreed to, and somebody swooped in and kind of pulled the rug out from under the Predators that way, because that's not what we're not sure that's what we're seeing, but I don't really know what to do with the fact that he deleted the tweet.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's something to keep an eye on.
Because he's just like a stream of consciousness right now, tweeting out all these deals. They're like 1 and 2 minutes apart. So the fact that he sought out that tweet, deleted it, and kept it moving is certainly a red flag to me.
One of those is Yakov Trenin, by the way, who reunites with John Hines in Minnesota on a 4-year deal. But something to monitor.
Okay.
The Conn Smythe Award winner from last year, who seemed like it was official and maybe not.
Well, we'll keep an eye on the situation for you. Now, the thing that has been interesting to watch. Vegas, which is where March would, whomever he would sign with, if it's the Predators or somebody else.
Okay, Pierre LeBrun tweeting it as a done deal.
Okay.
He is tweeting Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault. Oh, my God.
Breaking sports news on 104.5 The Zone.
Good. I want you to feel my pain with this godforsaken thing. I want you to feel it in your soul the way that I do every time it cuts me off. The worst.
Got him.
615-737-1045 is the number. Okay, so everybody take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. Jonathan Marchessault agreeing to a 5-year deal worth $5.5 million on an average annual basis with the Nashville Predators. So was he on the original Vegas team when they put it together? What are you listening to right now?
Don't worry about it.
Well, I'm kind of in the middle of something, so yes, of course I'm.
What was your
worried.
question?
Was he on the original Vegas Golden Knights team when they did the expansion draft?
So he was on the Panthers, and he was drafted in the expansion draft to Vegas.
I see.
Stayed there through the Cup year, and has been there ever since.
Okay. Well, we'll take your phone calls on the Preds if you are interested in weighing in. 615-737-1045. Again, reportedly, Steven Stamkos also getting ready to agree to a deal with the Nashville Predators. What else do you have back there, Jackson?
The defenseman whose name neither one of us can pronounce, Brian Skeggy?
It's Brady.
Brady, my fault. 7 years, $7 million AAV per Pierre LeBrun.
Nobody ever heralded us for our hockey expertise, so the fact that one of the most famous defensemen in the sport is a name that all three of us are scared of. Did you listen to it?
I believe it's Shea.
No way.
Do you believe it's Shea, or did you listen to a YouTube video just now of some highlights to confirm that it was in fact Shea?
Don't worry about it.
Okay, very good. 615-737-1045 is the number. We'll take your phone calls on the Preds coming up next. All right. It's been an exciting offseason for both the hockey team and the football team. Titans and Preds, we are in the midst of NHL free agency right now. The Preds have signed Steven Stamkos to a reported 4-year, $32 million deal. That just came out from Elliot Friedman. Again, our boy Jonathan March is all I'm going to call him because I'm scared of his last name, and the SH sound that I keep trying to put in there is not helpful. But he is on a 5-year deal that averages $5.5 million on an average annual basis. And they are also agreeing to terms with defenseman Brady Shea.
Yes, the Marchessault is not a difficult name.
Marchessault.
Yeah, I'm not sure why you're having such a hard time with that.
It's the CH, and I want to put an SH right after, and I don't know why my brain keeps trying to do that, so I apologize to Jonathan. We will have you on the show, and I will make my apologies in person.
I think the Preds signing Steven Stamkos and some defensive depth would have been considered a pretty good haul. Like just the Stamkos move alone.
Yeah, if there was Stamkos and a couple of players that maybe you knew, maybe you didn't, but they're good defensemen and you need some of that depth like you're talking about. Yes, I would have looked around and said, okay, legitimate star power to add to a team that's already got some but needs a little more juice.
So what Barry Trotz is doing here with all three, this is insane. And then this may be asking too much, but Chandler Stevenson is an unrestricted free agent, the 30-year-old former Capitals defenseman, that former Vegas defenseman as well, was March's teammate in Vegas. He's being talked about as well as somebody to keep an eye on with the Preds. So this could very well be turning into the biggest Preds offseason we've ever seen.
So the context of that is interesting because I would argue that we're coming off the biggest offseason the Titans have ever seen in terms of the money that they spent on name brand players. The amount of players, Lucas, that used to play or have been associated with this franchise that I've either talked to or texted about, that the Titans were out here as day one free agency buyers, shocked them and probably upset them a little bit for what this franchise has been typically known for. Predators in a little bit of a different spot. It's not like they've been reticent to hand out big money to legitimate stars. We've seen them do this and move players who are legitimate stars. Do you think they would redo the Shea Weber PK Subban deal?
Probably, in hindsight.
You think?
And the irony is Weber and Poyle going into the Hockey Hall of Fame in the same class.
Are they really? I didn't see that.
Yeah, you missed this last week? Yes, both David Poyle and Shea Weber are part of the 7-man class going into the Hockey Hall of Fame.
That's
ceremony happening in November.
I think that's a little awkward when they're sitting in the green room ready for trophy presentations or award ceremonies or whatever the case may be. That's funny.
You don't want me, man.
Truly.
No, Weber's still a franchise legend.
So, of course, the Preds and the Titans, do they feel like they have a little bit of an unspoken rivalry for eyeballs and attention? Now, this is probably the case for any number of pro sports franchises, or frankly, in a city like Nashville or Vegas or entertainment hubs, where you're just trying to compete for eyeballs, purchase, discretionary income, all of it. Titans and Preds, though, I think have a little bit of something. Well, I know have a little bit of something roiling under the surface about how much they actually want to stick it to the other and be the team of the town, right? That they are both in this mode right now. Preds a little bit ahead of the Titans, having made the postseason most recently, after having missed the postseason for the first time in quite some time. Titans not quite bottom of the barrel in the NFL last season, but pretty close, or as close to bottoming out as we've become used to in the last, let's call it a decade, just to make it a round number, of them having 6 consecutive winning seasons and several postseason appearances and all these other things. It is a tremendous time to be a sports fan in Nashville, or a Nashville sports fan, because where the Predators are trending, where the Titans are trying to trend, and looks like they might have the legitimate pieces and parts to get them there, you've got Obviously, Major League Soccer, I know suffering a loss to Miami is not an ideal situation. Give me just a brief synopsis of where the soccer team is right now, because I didn't watch the game on Saturday.
Above the playoff line in the East and still in pursuit of their next manager. Rumba Muntali has done a fine job. You have to give him a ton of credit for stabilizing things.
He's held the fort.
As the interim, he absolutely has. I mean, they've been unbeaten on the road since he took over. They've won back-to-back games. They've knocked off some teams that they probably were not favored against, like Cincinnati on the road a couple of weeks ago. And they've got a tough road trip ahead at a red-hot Columbus team Wednesday, and then West Coast at Portland on a late kickoff Sunday night. But Rumba's done a fine job. They're in 7th. They're in good position in regards to the playoff line, and you expect them to name a coach in the very near future. Leagues Cup is coming up as well in late July.
Okay, so Vol's trending in the right direction. Titans should be trending in the right direction, depending on how all this looks. Preds definitely trending in the right direction. Nashville SC kind of just even keel at this point, based on what our expectations for the soccer club has been in their very, very young existence. Titans and Preds, though, let's just narrow it down to the two. And, I mean, I'd be willing to have the conversation about Tennessee if you wanted to, the Vols, in the mix in this, but just the two pro sports teams in the city that are coming off their off seasons. Who do you feel better about right now? Just generally, before we talk about, winning the division or winning the conference or winning the Stanley Cup or the Lombardi Trophy, generally, if I asked a Nashville sports fan, which franchise between the two of those do you feel better about right now and their trajectory? I don't know that it's an easy question to answer.
I think my answer would be the Preds.
I'm inclined to agree with you, but only because I know more, or at least I think I know more about what they are, plus the pieces that they've just added. I'm not going to pretend. I mean, if you've listened to this radio show long enough, you know that I'm not a hockey expert, okay? I'm not going to give you the ins and outs that way. But understanding the team that they had in place, the clear and obvious momentum that we saw carry them into the postseason results, not ideal. And you would like for them to have been, even if they would have ultimately lost the series, I would have liked to see them be more competitive in the series. These moves make me feel infinitely better about the hockey team competing for something of consequence than I do right now with all the different unknowns, including the head coach, about the football team. Not that the Titans have done anything wrong. I'm of the belief that the Titans have checked damn near every possible box that they could have checked, with some nitpicking stuff about defensive line depth and what have you. But I can't quantifiably tell you what the Tennessee Titans are going to be the way that I can show you a representative sample size of the Preds and be like, okay, now add Steven Stamkos. Closer to a title, definitely the Preds.
All they're doing is adding proven commodities, star players. I mean, elite players of their generation into this team, where the question is not like it is with Levis, what are you going to get from Levis? The plan here for the Titans is to figure out what you have in your quarterback, the most important position in sports, a position that you simply cannot win at a high level with if you do not have great to elite play, right? If you do not have a great to elite quarterback, you will not win a Super Bowl. Maybe, we can get into the kind of Brock Purdy and the Niners, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
With the Preds, that's not really a discussion.
You've just got to equip yourself as best as humanly possible, so if the moment and the luck goes your way, you've got the team in place.
Exactly. And now they have a similar situation in that Titans didn't really, after they paid Jeff, have any looming contracts to give out, right? From guys on rookie deals. Preds don't really have that either. They extend Saros, and they have this flexibility to give Stamkos his deal, Marchessault his deal, to give Shea his deal, because they don't have any draft picks sitting there that you've been looking at as sort of the clock ticking on. That's going to break through in a way that you're going to have to pay him. That's not happened with the Preds, and not happened with the Titans as well. So they have this flexibility to give out big money in free agency. Both franchises do. But you don't have everything hinging on a young player, the most important player on the team that we don't really know enough to make a determination about with the Preds like you do with the Titans.
Well, and the difference being is obviously you have the minor leagues for hockey players to kind of work out the kinks. Like the NHL draft, I don't want to say it's irrelevant for somebody like me because I know I'm not going to see these players for 2 or maybe 3 years in some of their cases. You have a bit more of a developmental situation to where you're never really in that spot, right? I mean, maybe because of injuries and you're just pulling guys up from Milwaukee or what have you, the way that they were 2 seasons prior, but you're not really in a situation where you have Levis isn't a completely unknown commodity, but there's a lot of unknowns around him right now. Hockey doesn't quite work that way because of the farm system, essentially.
And we've seen what Andrew Burnett wants to do. We've seen him implement his style. We saw it take a minute, and then the Preds get really hot and get into the postseason, whereas nothing is proven yet in the Brian Callahan era. There is hope. There is an abundance of, what's the word? Optimism, right, with the fan base, but nothing has been proven yet. Nothing's been laid out tangibly in front of us in the Brian Callahan era in the way that it has with Andrew Burnett. And now they're building off of that, whereas the Titans are kind of getting out of the gates with that this season.
You haven't had a moment where this particular iteration of the Titans has gotten their teeth kicked in for one reason or another and had to respond
exactly
to show you something, right? I have seen quantifiable evidence that the moves the Preds made, including the general manager and the head coach, and the ripple effect of the staff and things like that, you feel pretty good about it, even though I know some Florida Panthers fans who are raising the cup in front of, dozens and dozens of hockey fans parading with them on South Beach, potentially ignoring them, who's to say. I know some Florida Panthers fans had voiced the idea of moving on from Andrew Burnett being a good decision, and now they have the Stanley Cup to kind of hold up and say, well, everything that we did was right.
I mean, we just saw Philip Forsberg have the best year of his career in Andrew Burnett's system, and now he's going to be surrounded by much more elite talent, at least on that top line. And Ryan O'Reilly, which was a good signing last year. Like, Ryan O'Reilly was a good player for the Preds last year, can kind of get pushed down at this point, and you have some sort of depth at center that you didn't have before. So this is extremely exciting. Like, if you had to stack up for the Titans fan base and Preds fan base, who is having the more exciting offseason, I think right now you could argue the Preds because of their respective position at the moment.
Hey, okay, so recency bias is going to be a thing, and also because we had live news flying around during the free agency period in the NFL too. The players that they are adding at their respective positions versus, let's just say, what the Titans added at their respective. The Titans didn't trade for Justin Jefferson, right? Now, I'm not saying that signing Steven Stamkos at an advanced age is akin to trading for Justin Jefferson or anything like that. I'm not trying to do one-to-one comparisons here, but I think the players that you have, what you just cited about is specifically Forsberg, who, I mean, is Phil even 30 yet? He might be 29. He's been in the NHL forever, but I don't think he's 30.
Yeah, he'll turn 30 in August.
Okay, so you have the trajectory of that. You have your best players still producing at a high level, and you add, national star power, championship caliber. So in this, let's flesh this out a little bit. In this equation, if I'm going to try and make these parallels, championship caliber, championship winning, proven player in Steven Stamkos, is this the Preds' L'Jarius Sneed? Because Sneed is not the profile or the record-setting player in his sport that Stamkos is. But there is no question that he was a massive part of the back-to-back championships that the Kansas City Chiefs won. There's no question that Steven Stamkos has been an integral part of Tampa Bay's teams when they were winning Stanley Cups on a regular basis.
I mean, if you're going to go defense to defense, then it's Brady Shea, right? Like Steven Stamkos, again.
That's not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is I'm talking. I'm not talking about the application of the football or the hockey. I'm talking about. You said that the Preds fans or Preds, there's more reason to be excited about the Preds right now. And I'm trying to do the one-to-one comparison of who were Titans fans more excited about L'Jarius Sneed than Preds fans are about Steven Stamkos.
The biggest move of the offseason was L'Jarius Sneed for the Titans. The biggest move of the offseason here will be Steven Stamkos. I see what you're saying. We
agree with that because Ridley may end up leading the team in receiving, but there is no question that the biggest void on the team was tackle and then your defensive back situation. To be able to do that with Sneed makes you legitimately competitive on the defensive side of the ball, especially when Andy Reid And, talking to a lot of people around the league who not just study the Chiefs, but also work for and with the Chiefs, that is going to be the biggest thing that they have to overcome in their three-peat defense as they try and three-peat the Kansas City Chiefs. Not having a corner that you can just leave alone on an island. And I don't know that he's going to be able to do that in Tennessee. I know that he's been pretty successful at it the past couple of seasons in Kansas City. That is one of the biggest things that the Chiefs are going to have to overcome this season. I don't know if that's the same thing for Tampa.
Kurt on the F&M Bank chat says the Preds just picked up 3 of the top 5 available free agents.
Right, and the Titans signed a Tier 2 wide receiver by most people's estimation, who, by the way, you needed. I'm not dismissing Calvin Ridley by saying Tier 2. I'm just saying among NFL wide receivers, you're probably naming 10 to 15 players before you get to Calvin Ridley. A center who was the best available, so you got that guy. And then you traded for Snead. So they're kind of comparable. If you're going to boil it down to 3 moves that the Preds have made this morning versus 3 biggest moves that the Titans made, those are probably equitable, even if J.C. Latham has a more important role to play.
We talked about it. Marchessault scored 42 goals last season. Steven Stamkos scored 40, and Philip Forsberg scored 46. Like I said, I doubt that there has been a year in Preds history where the top line, if that's what it is, of Marchessault, Stamkos, and Forsberg, where all 3 had a 40-goal season the year prior. I would be shocked if that has ever happened before, considering that the Preds didn't have a 40-goal scorer in their franchise history until Philip Forsberg and then Matt Duchene did it in the same season.
My burner account on YouTube, apparently, Duck Falling, says Buck tries to talk hockey, immediately pivots to football. Listen, I have to. It's the best way I can give you the analysis. I got to run it through my own prism here. Now, it's going to be an excellent hockey season. Like the hype heading into the next hockey season is going to be greater than it will be around the Titans.
I mean, who is the happiest person in the Preds building right now? Is it Andrew Burnett? Is it UC Saros?
Probably the marketing people.
Is it Roman Josi? Is it Philip Forsberg? I mean, a lot of happy faces all around in terms of the rising tide that these signings can be for the Preds.
So if I'm going to continue my faux hockey analysis through the prism of football, who in this situation is Levis, who's just looking around at all his new toys and saying, oh my God, look, did you see the size of that left tackle they brought in? Look at his hands. Oh my God.
Well, defensively, this has to be a huge relief for UC Saros. And for Roman Josi, who was doing the heavy lifting in that regard last year. And same with Philip Forsberg in terms of the scoring. So there's a few guys you could put into that category, but probably nobody happier than Andrew Burnett today.
Sure. 615-737-1045 is the number. We will get into this a little later on. Again, we'll continue. Free agency hasn't stopped just because the Preds signed have reportedly signed 3 of the biggest names on the open market right now. They also have some players that they stand to lose. For example, Alexander Carrier is probably going to be a good value player. Would there be any interest? It depends on how you distribute the money, and I think the Brady Shea deal probably negates the need for Carrier, who's a defenseman as well. Probably content to let him walk at that point.
Yeah.
Probably going to make somewhere $2-3 million a year. Somewhere else, one would imagine. That kind of attrition, I think you're willing to live with because, of course, while you are still bringing players in, you're going to lose something there that's going to make it a little different than last year's team. But net positive right now for Barry Trotz. So we'll keep you updated with the latest. 615-737-1045 is the number. We're also going to talk about a Levis stat I saw floating around on the internet later in the third hour, but we'll continue the hockey conversation with your phone calls coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. It's been moving fast today because we've got hockey transactions flying all over the place, especially if you're a Nashville Predators fan. You are feeling pretty good right now. Now, I misspoke earlier because I did not see the report from Pierre LeBrun last night that they did, in fact, I think this is about 13 hours ago, as a matter of fact, they did re-sign Alexander Carrier in the wake of the McDonough trade as they try and retool their defenseman group. So you're feeling pretty good about the Preds' top-end scoring, top two lines at this point. Feeling pretty good about the depth that you have. Barry Trotz is cooking over there. Is it 505 Broadway is where they're located at? Is that right? No, 505 building is a different thing entirely. Anyway.
I don't know.
Okay, very good. The Preds have about $6 million in cap space left?
Just under.
Where else does that money need to be spent today? It need to be spent today. Like it's tough to check a list better, check a checklist better than the Preds just did. But if you had to, and you don't have to spend to the cap, but, we'll call it ballpark 6. Still money of consequence in the NHL. So we should still expect at least one more move.
Wonder if you'd be looking at a backup goaltender coming in. I mean, the biggest question of the Preds offseason, it felt like, was what's going to happen between UC Saros and Yaroslav Askarov. And Saros gets the extension. Taylor says in the F&M Bank chat that he's the happiest person in the Preds building. He got the money. He got the terms.
Sure.
He is way more comfortable waking up this morning. Then they add these picks on top of it. And they're going to figure to be much better in front of him defensively with Shea coming into the picture to join Roman Josi and Carrier extended. But I wonder what that looks like. The backup goaltender for this year. How ready or not ready do they believe Yaroslav Askarov is to come into the NHL? Clearly, they do not believe he is prepared to be a starting goaltender in the National Hockey League. That is obvious. But beyond that, I don't know.
So Steven Stamkos is apparently on Canadian television right now being interviewed about this in the midst of the NHL free agency frenzy. Jackson, you don't have audio, but you have tweets?
I do have tweets from Alex Doherty, who came on the show Friday. So Stamkos on TSN said every time we were looking for something that would interest us in a new team, Nashville kept popping up. So thankful that they had mutual interest. He went on to say once we made that call to Barry Trotz and the Preds, the feeling of leaving Tampa went away, and it's just been pure excitement.
So, love to hear that if you're a Preds fan. Love to have him on your team. The backup goalie thing. Somebody, Alex at some point probably, or, if we floated the idea of reaching out to the Preds about Barry Trotz in the wake of free agency. I'm sure we won't be the only ones, but still, I would be curious to know how transparent he is about Askarov's situation, because there does at least, and I can't learn everything that I need to know from a player just from highlights that are on social media, right? And I will not lie to you to say that I'm watching a ton of Milwaukee Admirals games. He seems a bit immature based on his behavior in game. He's clearly got a temper. I've never seen a goalie come out of net and start to push people around the way that I've seen him do on more than one occasion at this point. And again, it's just social media highlights, so it's either going to be really good or really bad that you see. But I would be fascinated to know, because famously he put up an Instagram post on his story of him drinking a drink out of a coconut, sitting on a beach somewhere. What was
he said everything happens for a reason.
Sure.
And that was right when the Saros deal got announced.
How old is he?
Askarov is 22. It's extremely young. He just turned 22.
I'm not super, in the same way that Tavondre Sweat, I do think that there's a little bit of premature hand-wringing about a 21-year-old who's fresh out of college and having their first real pro opportunity. There are some things to monitor. The maturity situation is not something that I'm going to get super bent out of shape about. But if there are actual hockey reasons that they have for, and I'm sure they do, for not just bringing Askarov up to back up UC Saros, because UC Saros plays so many damn games. They have to, I would think they would have to find some moderate level of relief for him. I don't think, do we feel like that's sustainable?
It can go one of two ways. I think you can have a goaltender that takes on that load, or you can go with the duo. I mean, we've seen the Panthers do that with a ton of success. Sergei Bobrovsky played every game in the Stanley Cup final, and we see teams split it fairly 50-50, something the Preds got into doing a little bit when Pekka Rinne was still around really late in his career.
Yeah, towards the end.
But do you bring back Kevin Lankinen?
People like, and he's serviceable. He's completely serviceable. I think that most Preds fans would probably be just fine with the idea of bringing back Kevin Lankinen.
I think so. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that last bit of change. But Steven Stamkos, man, you're talking about the best player in Tampa Bay Lightning history. Most career points by a Lightning player, most career goals, most career hat tricks, most career power play goals, game-winning goals, even strength goals. I mean, you name it, Steven Stamkos is the definition of a franchise legend. 2-time Stanley Cup winner, 7-time All-Star, all of those things. 16 seasons in Tampa. So goal scoring, firepower, in the ozone, you check that box twice with Marchessault and Stamkos. And bringing in Shea checks that need at defenseman. And it's amazing that all happens in like the first 15 minutes of free agency.
Well, I mean, that is the thing. It has been an incredibly fast start. And I'm not the comparisons between NHL and NFL free agency are not worth making here. It does seem like this is moving faster than I'm accustomed to.
And there's almost a bit of irony in the way that Barry Trotz was viewed towards the end of his coaching tenure here, in that it got a little bit stale. And the Preds, I don't think ever shook that tag that seems to permeate throughout Nashville professional sports teams of maybe a little conservative, scrappy, defensive, right? Tough, hard to play against. And it was probably time for Barry Trotz to move on as a head coach. But here he is as the general manager, and it's anything but that. It's big swings, wanting to be an attractive style of play with Andrew Brunette. Big names coming in, star power, really pushing your chips in a way that I don't think the Preds have ever done in one singular offseason.
615-737-1045 is the number. So the contracts in not just the NHL, because NBA free agency is going on right now as well, but NHL obviously more relevant to us. Jake Gensel signing a 7-year, $63 million deal with the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Panthers re-signed Sam Reinhart to a $69 million deal. And then you have the Preds entering the chat with 3 blockbuster deals for Steven Stamkos, 4 years, $32. Jonathan Marchessault.
Good job.
5 years, $25 million. It'll just take me some reps. And Brady Shea, 7 years, $49 million, reportedly. I also saw that the Oilers, where did that go? I think the Oilers signed Victor Arvidsson on a 2-year deal. Has he been in Los Angeles since they moved him?
Yes.
Okay. So we will keep you updated with the latest if the Nashville Predators continue to make moves, as we expect them to do so. We will let you know. We will also talk a little bit about the 3-year anniversary of Name, Image, and Likeness. What have been the most landmark moments in that? And a little bit of Will Levis talk, too. Final hours coming up next.
It is 11:58. Happy Monday. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. It is the first day of NHL free agency, and the Nashville Predators are making blockbuster moves. 3 major deals that have been reported as done deals by Pierre LeBrun. They are former Lightning legend Steven Stamkos on 4 years, $8 million in average annual value. Former Vegas Golden Knight Jonathan Marchessault, 5 years, $5.5 million in average annual value. And former Carolina Hurricane defenseman Brady Shea. The deal reported as 7 years at $7 million in average annual value. Also, the Predators reportedly extending defenseman Alexander Carrier. Tonight, the U.S. men's national team takes on Uruguay at Arrowhead Stadium. It is the final group stage game at Copa America. The U.S. needs a win to advance out of the group stage. Kickoff is at 8 p.m. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour is upon us. Show is moving quickly. Free agency contracts are flying. The Nashville Predators are right at the top of the heap as far as spending right now with those 3 deals you just heard Lucas rattle off. Welcome in. We've got Jackson. We've got Lucas, as I mentioned. We've got your phone calls. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in. You also have access to the F&M Bank chat if you would like to make your thoughts known there. So, while we keep an eye on the Preds, because it's tough to imagine they would do anything bigger than what they've just done in the last hour of us being on the air, we'll keep an eye on it.
I don't imagine there's been this much Nashville Predators talk on TSN in Canada since the Preds were in the Stanley Cup final, because Steven Stamkos has just done an interview, and Jonathan Marchessault is apparently going on TSN as we speak.
Okay. Well, look at that's a fair amount of access that TSN has to be able to get those guys in real time as, you know, their representation is inking deals or trying to get contracts agreed to or whatever. So we'll keep an eye on that for you. We're going to have John Glennon tomorrow in some form or fashion?
John Glennon in some form or fashion at 10:20 tomorrow morning.
Okay, so Glennon will be able to give us the historical context of how big of an offseason this is compared to the rest of the Nashville Predators history. So I'll look forward to that conversation. So we haven't had Johnny on in a long time.
It's been a while.
I feel like I don't have Glennon on very often here. At least we do the podcast with Glennon, the 615 sessions with all the local media members on a regular basis. But either way, Glennon will be here tomorrow. Now, while we take a quick pivot away from the NHL, there are a couple of different headlines that I'd like to go around the room. I don't know where you two want to start. Do we want to talk first about the 3-year anniversary of name, image, and likeness? Also on the day that Texas and Oklahoma joined the SEC, or would you rather me give you some misleading Levis accuracy talk?
Jackson, what do you prefer?
Your vote counts for 2. We're going to make Lucas 1 vote.
NIL.
NIL it is.
I want to watch him squirm.
Me?
Yeah.
Why would I squirm with NIL?
I don't know. I know it's the one you would like to talk about less.
No, I don't think that's true. You know how tired I am of talking about useless stats when there's no football going on? No, I'm fine to talk about name, image, and likeness. It's just I can do the quarterback stuff. Anyway.
Today is the 3-year anniversary of NIL being basically made legal, you're saying?
Yesterday was the day. Today is the first day, our first opportunity to talk about it.
You know what today also is?
What?
Canada Day.
Okay.
It's basically Canada's Independence Day, as the Preds sign Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault, and they go on Canadian sports networks to talk about the city of Nashville. Stealing their thunder a little bit. I love it.
Got anywhere to go with that?
No.
I'd love, if you got a direction for me with Canada Day, I'd love to take it, other than the dead fish you just dropped in my lap.
Did we win Hate Canada Week?
We did. This is our victory. We on the day that these two signed with the Nashville Predators, we have officially won Canada Hate Week. It only took us about 2 or 3 months. So great victory for us. Congratulations to us as a show. Anyway, 3-year anniversary of name, image, and likeness. one of the most consequential sports moments, and you could argue business moments, in my lifetime, where for the longest, the wrong that was semi-righted by name, image, and likeness, athletes not being paid, unpaid labor, producing a multi-billion-dollar product on the whole, not in each individual sport, but on the whole, and bankrolling the NCAA executives, this, that, and the other for years and years to come, and, generating overpaid coaches' salaries and all these kind of things, all manner of revenue that wasn't going to the workforce. The Supreme Court ruling, the unanimous ruling, we don't get unanimous, we don't get unanimity in anything these days, other than that last week's debate was a disaster. I think there was pretty close to unanimous on that. The Supreme Court ruling in and of itself is the most important thing to happen at any point in the last 3 years since this legislation was passed. Second on that list, though, Lucas, if I had to pick, would be Tennessee initially filing suit, the state of Tennessee and the Commonwealth of Virginia, initially filing suit to be what is the biggest example of the NCAA crumbling that I have seen since the Supreme Court ruling. The domino effect that it had, the fact that more states jumped in on the legal proceedings, the fact that the NCAA continues to lose in court and is now on the hook for billions in settlement money. How big a part to play the state of Tennessee has had in the name, image, and likeness stuff, because it's not just that. Nico's deal, whatever the actual figure is, reported to be around $8 million, and I heard $1 million just to get in the door. Now, I don't know how real that is, but still.
But it was the first one of those reported in that nature.
The first one of those. So Tennessee on the forefront of name, image, and likeness mobilization with the Spire Sports Collective, getting in the door and then securing Nico Iamaleava, the best quarterback prospect that the university has had since Clausen or Manning. And then the suit itself, which has been one of the biggest body blows to the NCAA that they have experienced at any point in the last 3 years, which also probably would include something that I think you're going to bring to the table.
Jaden Rashada.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, Jaden Rashada. Now we have a SEC player suing another SEC school for an issue during his recruitment and NIL money that was promised that was not delivered.
So there is a lot of details yet to come in the Rashada case, where that just got filed, right, within the last month and a half.
Yeah.
So we're still setting precedent that way in the name, image, and likeness era. But I'd be curious to know if college sports fans, not just football fans, but college sports fans, feel better or worse about the state of collegiate athletics than they did 3 years ago. Twitter polls are not scientific, and, depending on who puts up the Twitter poll, it can be skewed. I would have a hard time, I think, now that you're talking conference realignment, right? Texas and Oklahoma, that's not the most egregious one. We talked about Stanford being in the ACC here in the next couple of days, among other conference realignment moves. But I wonder how many college sports fans would answer that they feel, fans, not players, feel better about the state of collegiate athletics on the whole than they did 3 years ago before this was passed.
3 years ago, for people that were very happy with the state of collegiate athletics, though, was probably kind of an out of sight, out of mind, ignorance is bliss sort of situation, right? Because you could feel both ways. Like, you could feel torn between, well, no, the players have to get paid, right? Like the Supreme Court said, there was no other system in the U.S. where you can make this amount of money on the backs of the labor of these people, and they literally don't get a dime. It doesn't happen anywhere. And I firmly believe that and have totally accepted that from the jump, while also being torn that it's no longer the college football or the college athletic system that I grew up and fell in love with. But I understand why that's the case. So I think most people are on that path where they're torn between the two, that they wish it was the college football they knew and loved before, the craziness of conference realignment, because we've always had conference realignment, but not like this.
Yeah.
And before the way NIL has permeated throughout college athletics and particularly college football. But at the same time, you can understand why it had to happen in this way and be frustrated at the NCAA for being the primary reason in why it had to happen in this way and why we're seemingly living in chaos and hopefully just climbing out of it, because revenue sharing is another massive step here that has happened in the last few months that we haven't referenced yet.
Well, we did talk about it when the initial court rulings started to come down, or the settlement talks started to come down, rather, out of this most recent NCAA defeat, even though they're settling, so it's not technically a defeat, but it's a defeat for the NCAA. The acceptance factor of it is I think, spot on. College sports fans are probably not thrilled with the way that things are heading, but they understand, I think, for the most part, why it absolutely had to be this way. Now, how much is it actually going to change, for example, your viewing experience or when you attend these games? I don't know. If you're a Michigan fan and you're going to the Michigan USC game on a regular basis, a fierce and noted Big Ten rivalry, I don't know how much that's going to affect it, other than you're going to get to watch USC play, which is probably going to be filled with plenty of pro prospects, high-level offense, maybe not some defense, but still, like, it's not going to bother people that way once these games actually start to be played. How much more we have yet to do, because we're 3 years into this thing, and it feels like we've just not even scratched the surface. The revenue sharing is huge. Universities also have to opt into that, which is an interesting detail that we will work through as that stuff starts to become, basically, as universities start to declare whether they're going to opt in to the revenue sharing or not. I feel that there is still so much more to come down, because we just don't know how all of this is going to look yet, and it's a constantly evolving thing. That's what I identify the last 3 years, basically since you and I have been on the air together here at the Zone. It has been a constant state of flux in collegiate athletics that we are taking new information in, adapting to the information that we had. How is it different from the way that things were run previously, and how will it impact things moving forward? And I still feel like I have 10 million questions about what the state of collegiate athletics is going to look like 10 years from now.
Oh, yeah. We have more questions than we did 3-4 years ago. That's for sure.
Well, we didn't. I think, I don't know. Did you think when the Supreme Court ruling came down that it would be this kind of complicated? Now, you and I are not athletic administrators. We're not university presidents. We're two loudmouths with microphones in front of our faces who are tasked with talking about the news. I could not have possibly imagined the ripple effect, even as I understood there was going to be a pretty seismic shift in the way that we consumed and talked about collegiate, or at least the business of college sports, if not the actual sports themselves. I don't think I could have ever envisioned how much different it would look, feel, sound, all of it 3 years from now, even as I understood that we were in for one of the biggest shifts in sports in your or my lifetime.
It is amazing. In each of the last 3 years, we have had at least one massive, pivotal, I don't know if you want to call them steps forward, because a lot of them have been steps backwards, but moments in the shaping of collegiate athletics, whether it was the Supreme Court ruling, and then later in 2021, Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC, and then you have USC and UCLA to the Big Ten, and then you have massive NIL deals start to trickle down, whether it's Nico and Jaden Rashada, and then the lawsuit from Tennessee, revenue sharing coming down this year. In every one of those calendar years since that moment of the Supreme Court ruling, we have had multiple massive domino moments in the history of college athletics. Like as many in the last 3 years as we probably had in the 30 years before that, if we're being totally honest, in terms of how those singular moments will impact the future of college sports, particularly college football.
So happy anniversary. Do we have Stephen A. back there to wish name, image, and likeness a happy 3-year birthday?
And happy birthday to him. I don't care. Good luck.
I think that's wrong what Stephen A. did. I don't think you should assign Sextus name, image, and likeness. Mistake.
More Preds news
coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We have more hockey news, more Preds news. As a matter of fact, Lucas, what is the latest transaction on the heels of the first three major contracts that the Nashville Predators handed out once free agency officially opened, an hour and 20 minutes ago?
Yes, and we were speculating at what the Preds would do with their remaining just under $6 million left in cap space. Talked about the potential of a backup goaltender. Seems like that's what's happening. Multiple reports that the Preds are signing goaltender Scott Wedgwood to a 2-year deal. He was the backup in Dallas in each of the last 3 years. He played in 32 games last season. He started 28, and he had a record of 16-7, a save percentage of .899. In the year prior, he started 18 games, played in 21, and a save percentage of .915. Now, by comparison, Kevin Lankinen, in each of the last 2 years, has started 18 and 17 games, respectively.
So he's barely played. He barely played. Now, Saros was good enough when Pecorine was starting to fade that it made sense to split time far more evenly. UC Saros is not the best goaltender in the world, but he's a really, really high-level player, especially when you consider what he has to adjust for, which is his size. The defensemen are critical signings. The depth there are critical signings because just the way that we talked about, at least in the later stages of the regular season and in the postseason series, the way that teams were effectively able to not just screen Saros, but take advantage of, Teresa Walker said it more definitively than I did, just a general lack of organization in front of the net in critical situations. Like it felt like those late game goals that they were giving up were a consistent theme. It did not feel like pinning the blame on Saros, even though Saros is the most obvious person that people would try to pin blame on. It felt like, the team is telling you it's more about the defensemen and more about the players that we have in front of Saros than it was about Saros himself by nature of the contract and the moves that they've continued to make. Now, Askarov, they don't have to move him or anything like that while he continues to play with the Milwaukee Admirals. Is it a concern at all that this is a player that is not yet ready at the NHL level, even though all Preds fans can do is tweet highlights and kind of, thirst trap the idea of Askarov in gold and white?
It doesn't hurt anything to leave him in Milwaukee for the time being, right?
I don't know that.
What is the drawback of letting Askarov continue to develop, who at 22 is an extremely young player still in the NHL ecosystem?
Well, the drawback is not as much for the team. You're correct. For the team, it makes all the sense in the world. For Askarov, I don't know what the drawbacks could be. Now, again, he is young. It's not like you see a ton of 22-year-olds running around in net at the NHL level. But even to be a backup, if you're going to play that infrequently, my biggest thing would be, and again, they are far better judges of this than I. It's just a general question that I have about the way that they're managing the situation. Would he not be better being surrounded by NHL talent who he is going to, influences that will teach him how to be the kind of professional player that they want him to ultimately be, that he has the talent to ultimately be? Would it not be better to bring him up? Again, I'm ignorant in terms of how they manage the minor league system, the AHL and the NHL. If I pose that question, what's the pushback?
It feels pretty simple to me that if they felt Askarov was ready for that opportunity, he'd be getting that opportunity. And they wouldn't be allocating funds, resources to bringing in a backup goaltender and a quality backup goaltender. And everything out of Dallas about Scott Wedgwood leaving is how big of a hit that is to the locker room and how universally beloved he seemed to be by teammates in Dallas as the backup. So if they felt he was ready, Askarov would be the option. And he's not. So clearly they don't feel that way at this moment.
Sure.
And they see no damage in leaving him in Milwaukee because Askarov does not have the power, right, in this situation. He does not have the leverage. He is the prospect. He's the prospect. The Preds are the franchise. This is what they're choosing to do with him. And, injuries can happen and opportunities can be there down the road. And we'll see how he picks up with the Milwaukee Admirals in this next season. But if they felt he was ready, then that would probably be the decision, and it's not.
I need to learn more about how AHL contracts work, because I don't know how much leverage he actually has before he's brought up on a major league contract that way, or an NHL contract that way. Because I know there's some differentiations, and I don't know that there's an out or anything like that, but I'd just be curious to kind of do a little more research on that, because several people in the F&M Bank chat are saying that he can leverage the situation by saying that trade me or I'll go back to Russia.
Oh, sure. He could, any player could do that, right? But the Preds have full autonomy to decide whether or not they believe Askarov is ready to help them as a starting or backup goaltender. Clearly, that answer at the moment seems to be no.
Now, there is audio we do have now from Steven Stamkos, who was on TSN, Canadian television, sports television, giving interviews. I guess I'm sure they're doing a free agency frenzy type of broadcast where they bring a bunch of these players in, or where they interview a bunch of these players literally as the contracts are being agreed to. So here is Steven Stamkos on why Nashville.
Just to have a team show as much interest as Nashville did, with how excited they were about the possibility of me coming, from their ownership to their GM to their coach, to some of the players on the team that I'm familiar with. It just made us feel really, really special and really good, and made that decision that much easier.
So that's Stamkos on with TSN. Jackson is working diligently to get some Marchessault audio. Did I pronounce that a different way?
You got it. Good. You just sounded it out.
Marchessault.
It sounds like they kind of were feeding off each other throughout this decision. I mean, former teammates had 1 year together in Tampa about a decade ago. One thing that Steven Stamkos brings that this team struggled with so poorly at the end of the season.
Oh, my God, power play.
Third most power play goals by any player in the NHL last year, Steve Stamkos, one of the best in the league. And the Preds, middling when you look at the season numbers, but, I mean, they had a dreadful power play in the postseason. It was at the very bottom of teams in the playoffs. So that brings immediate help in that regard.
615-737-1045 is the number. We can get back to the Preds talk as more information becomes available. So right now we're up to 4 free agents and 1 retained pending free agent in Alexander Carrier, who the team agreed to terms with on a deal about, less than 24 hours ago at this point. So exciting stuff for Preds fans, exciting stuff for the organization, and exciting stuff for UC Saros, who also gets a contract there.
And they will not land the UFA defenseman Chandler Stevenson, who reportedly agrees to a 7-year deal with Seattle.
Okay.
That would have really pushed it over the top.
So shall we pivot seamlessly and do a little Titans talk, since we're doing pro sports anyway? I saw a number on the internet yesterday that was very, very intriguing to me. This stat from Warren Sharp. So if you're unfamiliar with Warren Sharp, I think he made his name in Vegas, basically, not just because his name is Sharp, but because he has been using advanced analytics by which to forecast more effectively games for a long, long time now. And he always puts out a great NFL preview each and every offseason. He had a stat that I thought was one of the more contextualized ones. Do you feel like football is the sport where we use numbers the most without the context most often? Quarterback win-loss record, completion percentage, sacks even.
Sacks is probably one of the bigger ones in what you're talking about.
We're pretty dated as far as the advanced metrics being available, but how we work them into the discourse in professional football, as far as I can tell. This number, the highest rate of incompletions due to inaccurate passes. I don't know if you have the list in front of you, Lucas, but if I said to you, which quarterback in the National Football League last year, among quarterbacks who threw at least 175 passes, had the highest rate of incompletions due to inaccuracy, your answer would be whom?
Incompletions due to inaccuracy.
So quarterback error.
I want to go down to Atlanta and bring up Desmond Ridder, but I don't know if he would have thrown the ball enough to be in this conversation with how run heavy the Falcons were.
I do not have. Okay, Desmond Ridder is actually pretty low on this list. He is right above Baker Mayfield. So between Derek Carr and Baker Mayfield, a percentage of 29.5% of his passes caused incompletions due to his own inaccuracies. So it's It's pretty low.
What's the percentage at the top of that list?
43.9%. Damn near half. I will. Well, I'll tell you, two of the top 5 are in the AFC North. Can you guess?
Oh, so it would be either. Could it be? Are there multiple Browns quarterbacks on there?
There are multiple.
So it's Flacco and Deshaun Watson.
Well, Flacco's much lower on the list than Deshaun Watson is. Deshaun Watson is the leader in the clubhouse.
Goodness.
You're a $250 million man. The top 5 in terms of most incompletions caused by percentage due to their own inaccuracies at the quarterback position. Deshaun, 43.9%. A horrifying number if you were paying that kind of money. Tyrod Taylor, who played a fair amount of snaps last year at 40.6. You have Trevor Siemian, who I did not realize played that much football last year at 38.8. And then Bryce Young, 37.7. Lamar Jackson, 36.7. So if I give you those numbers at the top and I give you Desmond Ridder at 29.5%, where would you say that Will Levis's incompletions due to his own inaccuracies ranks? Because the bottom of the list, the most accurate quarterback or the fewest amount of incompletions caused due to inaccuracies. Do you want to take a guess there?
Go with 27?
For Levis?
Yeah.
You're correct.
Is it really? Right,
it's not 27 flat, but it is 27.4. Will Levis is the 9th most accurate quarterback on this list with the amount of his inaccuracies that caused incompletions. The bottom 10, which in this case is a good thing, in descending order. Josh Allen, Will Levis, Dak Prescott, Justin Herbert, Jared Goff, Russell Wilson, who checkdowns account for this as well, Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, Jake Browning, and at the top of the list, Geno, Mother Bleepin' Smith. Now, come on.
Levis did have a lower volume of pass attempts than a lot of those players.
But, so did Trevor Siemian.
Who did he even play for last season?
I want to say the Saints, but I don't think
Falcons.
that's right.
Wasn't he the Falcons guy? No, that was Heineke.
That's right. They had Heineke.
I don't know where Trevor Siemian was.
He was
last
a Bengal
year.
last year. He was also a Jet. Played for the Jets last year.
That makes sense. Anybody, please God, somebody throw a pass for us that's not Zach Wilson.
I forgot he started 3 games.
3 whole games for the Jets. Oh well, after a while, I just after the dark comedy of the Aaron Rodgers fiasco, I stopped watching.
Got to tune it out. Yeah, he is a
that.
free agent.
Okay, so Watson at the top. Woof. Levis top, technically bottom 10, but top 10. In this particular category, his completion percentage. How many people look at Will Levis, see the completion percentage in his rookie season of 58.4 and say that's an inaccurate quarterback? Flatly. No context.
Well, and it was a part of his draft evaluation as well.
Sure, but that's the lowest completion percentage he has had since his first year at Penn State, which was just north of 59%, I want to say. He was never lower than 60% at Kentucky. Completion percentage is one of these stats that I hate. It's like lazy numbers, right? You just put everything, no context whatsoever, under a giant umbrella, and you say, well, that's not an accurate quarterback because look at his completion percentage. And I understand why we did it that way for the longest time. Now that we have so many different numbers for context available, and I honestly think there's not a sport out there that requires more context for their numbers than professional football. I feel a lot better about the discussion around Will Levis and inaccuracies, because that was part of it in college, right? That's still something we're talking about. Can he become more consistently accurate? When in reality, can the football team around him become more consistent to allow him to be more consistently accurate? Because he has that ability to him. There are two different kinds of accuracy. One is general accuracy, right? Can you get it in the vicinity of the receiver? 2 is something we talk about a lot, ball placement. Can you put it in the spot where only your skill player can get to it? Can you throw the back shoulder? Can you get it over in a spot where only DeAndre Hopkins can reach up and grab it over the outstretched arms of a defensive back? Ball placement and accuracy are 2 different things. Will Levis is accurate enough for me. I think the ball placement thing is what they're trying to fine-tune.
So you're saying that number, the 58%, is misleading because
it doesn't take into account his offensive line.
Yeah.
Because they were third most in pressures last year. They were the least efficient pass blocking unit, according to Pro Football Focus. They accounted for, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of 254 total pressures on the quarterback. So it doesn't take into account his offensive line. It doesn't take into account that his receiving core, and as much as DeAndre Hopkins was a godsend last year, Titans receiving core, one of the slowest in the NFL last year.
And the year before that.
Correct. Not a great run. And it also doesn't take into account the system that he was running and how much of the system was not able to be run because of the offensive line deficiencies, right? We saw probably, I would say, a third of Tim Kelly's playbook, of what Tim Kelly actually has in his bag, because they have to help on every damn play, every pass protection play. You have to help the tackles. So it takes so much into account that way.
So that number made it seem worse than it actually was.
Would you not agree?
Yeah. No, that context is important. Do you know who the most accurate by completion percentage, straight up by percentage, most accurate quarterback? I mean, in terms of quarterbacks that started multiple games, right? Not like the double pass where the receiver throws one pass all season and completes it. So he's 100%. Of actual quarterbacks, who do you think was the most accurate in the NFL? I'll give you a hint. He's on this roster.
No, it's not Mason Rudolph.
Mason Rudolph, who, granted, played in 4 games.
Oh, wasn't the other guy.
In the regular season. Played in 5 games total. 4 games in the regular season. Completed, of the 74 pass attempts, he completed 74.3% of them. The second most accurate, Jake Browning, who played in 9 games, attempted 243 passes, and completed 70.4%.
Adds up here. He's second after Geno on this list. Burrow, for context, 28.9% of his passes caused incompletion due to his own inaccuracy. All right, so if I give you top of the list, bottom of the list, and Levis's number, what do you think Ryan Tannehill's number was?
Levis was right at 27%.
27.4. Deshaun, 43.9.
That week 1 game against New Orleans is flashing through my mind.
Hideous.
Right now.
Hideous.
So I'm going to say it was higher, and it was 32.
32.1. Look at you.
Oh, my God.
Since when are you good at the guessing game? We've been doing this for 3 years.
This is a banner day for me.
32.1% of Ryan Tannehill's passes caused incompletions due to his own inaccuracies. Again, does not take into context the amount of different things that Tannehill was also having to work against. I mean, it's definitely more in the range of names that you would associate Tannehill with. He's sandwiched between Garoppolo at 32.2 and Flacco at 30.9. Minshew, Justin Fields, Derek Carr, and Desmond Ridder were all ahead of Ryan Tannehill in that particular metric. But I do think that, I mean, frankly, football consumption has gotten smarter for sure. But there are so many mainstream stats that I would love to do away with, or at least make ancillary, like sacks and completion percentage and quarterback win-loss record, that don't actually give you the full context or the most possible context of how it is that these players succeed or fail.
That is an interesting look into what Levis did with pretty much the same situation that Ryan Tannehill had. Like, we all saw the first start, Atlanta, 4 touchdowns, 28-point mark for the first time in X amount of months or years or whatever the figure is. But that is a more interesting, more nuanced look at exactly how much more Levis was able to elevate what was around him, as middling as it was in terms of a supporting cast, more so than Ryan Tannehill was in the games that he started prior to Levis having to take over. And that being, remember, an injury situation. It was not Will Levis winning the job. It was Will Levis stepping in because Tannehill was hurt.
Well, and now here's the only thing that I will say in defense of that decision being forced upon them. They were never shy about Ryan Tannehill being the starter. But Levis playing in it's ironic that Levis is only his NFL debut, quote unquote, not Atlanta, but Chicago is where he will make his first start as the full-time, undisputed starting quarterback of the Titans this year.
Yeah, in the preseason.
But he got hurt, right? He got hurt in Minnesota. So there's no telling how much longer or how much shorter of a time it would have taken for the Titans coaching staff under the previous regime to make the difference. Because in this list alone, it's a difference of 13 spots from Ryan Tannehill to Will Levis.
Remember, they wouldn't even tell us if Levis was the backup before week 1.
That's just Mike being difficult.
Yeah, that was a strange one, wasn't it?
No, it's the most Mike Vrabel thing in the world.
But it was one of those that you're just like, well, why not though? You know?
Well, sure. Yeah, me sitting in the room just be like, come on, please, please, for God's sakes, just let me not have to. It's not that I get why he did it. He's trying to protect Malik, right? You're trying to not put Malik in a spot where you're immediately casting him aside after one half a season of disaster and 7 straight losses en route to the whole thing coming unraveled. So I get kind of the logic, but all it did is make us talk more about the backup quarterback situation. Mike did stuff like that all the time that drive you crazy. Anyway, 615-737-1045 is the... speaking of things that drive you crazy, Steve Lamb gives a perfect example of why the hell completion percentage needs to be moved to an ancillary stat as opposed to a primary one. Ryan Tannehill is tied with Tom Brady for the 16th most accurate passer in the history of the NFL. Respectfully, Ryan, send completion percentage into the sun.
I did everything right and they indicted me.
No, damn it, got a break.
That one does not apply.
Welcome back to the show. Last call for phone calls. If you got them, 615-737-1045 is the number. Lucas is hurling profanities at the French right now because he's been paying attention to a soccer game for most of the show. Today, what's going on in the Euros?
Oh, France just going to go ahead and steal a result away from Belgium despite being outplayed for most of the game in the first round of knockout stage.
Yeah, but they're still... Oh, so it's the first round of the knockout stage.
It's the round of 16 in the Euros.
Okay, so the French underwhelming early on was not enough to derail them too much. Now is the point in time where they're... Because it's been kind of lackluster for them. It's been very tournament, hasn't it?
Yes, and I'm bitter because Italy was eliminated by the Swiss over the weekend.
Yeah, and the memes of dumping spaghetti on Italian people.
In the world?
Well, that's AI. It's just these AI images. It's unbelievable.
What would be the Nashville equivalent of that? What would you have to be dumping on someone's head in a picture to depict a heartbreaking loss in the playoffs or something?
Pimento cheese?
From Hattie B's, like drinking Buddy beer cheese from Hattie B's.
Fine, I'll just look up at the sky like a turkey would and open my mouth and drown in it.
Absolutely. I'd love to.
Is that a real thing? I've always heard that. The turkeys like look at the sky when it's raining and open their mouths and drown. Is that a thing?
I hope so.
That's very cruel. I did not know that you hated turkeys as much as you hate the French. Concerning. So NASCAR Ally 400 over the weekend. Fair amount of weather delays. It sounded like it was tough to keep the track dry. Saw a lot of good images and a lot of fun being had out there despite the just oppressive heat for the majority of the race. I am so curious to see what the turnout for the Music City Grand Prix is going to be at that very same racetrack, Lucas, because Grace was asking me about it last year. We did the Music City Grand Prix, right? We had a great setup. The IndyCar took such good care of us in attending, and we had an awesome time. And this year, I can't go. And frankly, I don't know that I would want to go this year, even if I had the opportunity to. Because not only is it the home opener for the Titans, and obviously you and I will be working, but week 2 of football season, right in the middle of football season, is how they're justifying this. I love the event. It has the opportunity to be something I think really special for the city, and I love how much support NASCAR is getting. I'm dying to go to a race myself. I couldn't make it work this particular weekend, but I'm kind of worried about the Music City Grand Prix being out in Lebanon for the next 3 years, at least, while they figure out the Titan Stadium situation, because the race had great momentum, but the proximity to downtown is the biggest reason that the race had such great momentum.
Yeah, locally, right? Locally. Like that was
sure.
a big... Because IndyCar fans are going to come from far and wide.
Yes.
It's the last race of the IndyCar season happening at the Superspeedway. So it will still be a great time, but you're right. I mean, for those like us locally that had a phenomenal time, obviously we're going to be at Nissan Stadium for Titans versus Jets in week 2 of the NFL season.
Did you see the joke that Kendall D made in the chat?
Go ahead.
Week Tua.
Yeah.
The Hawk Tua girl.
Yeah. No, I get it.
She's everywhere. She's on stage singing with Zach Bryan at Nissan Stadium this weekend.
Yeah, I'm over the Hawk Tua stuff.
She's taking pictures with Shaq.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good on the Hawk Tua.
That
had about a 24-hour shelf life.
Your delight in the moment to see it a week after it had gone viral, because your level of behindness on the internet is always funny to me. But I have never seen a joke be overplayed so quickly.
Oof.
And result. By the way, great for her. I hope that it results in whatever her dreams are, because she's certainly getting a lot of publicity from it right now. But just enough at a certain point. I don't need to see her singing country music songs just because she went viral outside of the Barstool Bar on Broadway. Polls, please. We haven't done this one in way too long.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. Will Levis's completion percentage as a rookie, 58.4%. Is that a big deal, little deal, or no deal? 49% say it's a little deal. 40% say it's no deal. 10% say it's a big deal.
I think it could be a little deal. A little deal it's worth monitoring. It was kind of the book on him coming out of college. It was something that we talked about last year. He threw plenty of interceptable balls.
Yeah.
But I think that proper context for any NFL quarterback is required. Levis in particular, if you're going to cite, that's his worst number, right? Of all the Levis numbers that are out there, 58.4 is pretty ghastly.
Yeah, the interception number's not bad. Now, he got away with a few. But yes, that just if you're box score scouting, that's probably the one.
Lonzo just accused me in the YouTube comments of being jealous of Hawk Tua girls' clout, and then yes, I would.
You are.
I'm not shy about that.
Which Nashville team is closer to a championship? 70% are going with the Preds over the Titans.
Yeah, I think that's probably about right. Because the 30% are just, blindly Titans homers, and that's okay. Like, you're allowed to be. I'm not faulting you for that. But if you're being realistic about it,
yeah,
Preds way closer.
What we're seeing from the Preds right now is as go for it of an offseason as we maybe have ever seen with a Nashville pro sports franchise. What should be in Texas and Oklahoma's welcome bag to the SEC? Gator Mike says Golden Flake potato chips, a Huddle House gift card, and Sundrop.
That's great.
No, this is good. Mike Titan on Twitter says, a year of counseling, a bottle of crocodile tears, the world's smallest violin, and a hang in there poster with the cat hanging from a branch.
Oh my goodness. The amount of I thought we might get some comedic answers in the responses on that, because I know we're going to have an actual football discussion about it later in the week. But yeah, pretty well done.
What summer sporting event is more important to you? International soccer or Wimbledon, which begins this week? I believe you said to me this morning.
Yep.
72% are going with international soccer.
72%?
International soccer. USA plays Uruguay tonight in the group stage. It is do or die, win or go home, and a lot of those guys are going to have to play the game of their lives against a scorching hot and talented Uruguay team to even get out of the group stage, which if they didn't, would be an abject disaster for this Copa America that the U.S. is hosting.
I genuinely wonder how much that would differ if we were able to poll the on-air audience as opposed to just the internet.
I'm not surprised.
I am a little bit, though, Lucas.
I don't know a single person that legitimately pays attention to Wimbledon closely that way. I know people that love tennis and play tennis.
Not just Wimbledon right. Is what we're talking.
I don't think I know a single person that legitimately follows it like that. I know legions of people that follow the U.S. men's national team and the women's national team in international major tournaments.
Definitely I would have put above, but the U.S. men's national team has always been underachieving.
Well, they certainly will be if they lose tonight. Those are the polls.
Excellent. That's the show. We appreciate you guys hanging out. Blaine Bishop's coming up next. Have a great rest of your afternoon. I'll talk to you tonight on Primetime. So many people trust Two Rivers Ford. Football players, working moms, business owners. Why? Because Two Rivers Ford has been doing business with integrity for decades. Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer.